Opening ambience, the soft echo of footsteps on polished marble, distant chimes of a grand clerk, a faint rustle of silk drapery. A measured, resonant voice begins. Narrator. In the quiet, sun-dappled galleries of Kensington Palace, a new exhibition has opened its doors to the public. The polished floorboards, warmed by late summer light, guide visitors past glass cases that hold a life lived across continents, empires, and wars. At the heart of this display stands a woman whose name is as intricate as the filigree of the jewelry that once adorned her neck. Sophia Duleep Singh. Born on the 22nd of August, 1876, in the bustling colonial capital of Calcutta, Sophia entered the world as a princess of the Sikh Empire, the daughter of Maharaja Duleep Singh, himself the last sovereign of a realm that had once stretched from the Himalayas to the Arabian Sea. Her father, exiled by the British after the annexation of Punjab in 1849, lived his final years in England, a reluctant guest of the empire he had lost. Within this paradox of royalty and exile, Sophia's earliest memories were a blend of Indian courtly rituals and the stiff, soot-grey formality of Victorian England. At the age of 3, she was presented at the court of Queen Victoria, who, moved by the tragic arc of the Sikh dynasty, agreed to become her godmother. The Queen's christening mantle, soft, violet silk threaded with gold, was draped over the infant Sophia, a symbolic gesture that bound a displaced Indian princess to the very heart of the British monarchy. The young girl grew up hearing the Queen's voice echo through the corridors of Buckingham Palace, a voice that would later be recorded in letters describing the gentle grace of her goddaughter. Sophia's childhood was a study in contrasts. In the ornate drawing rooms of Kensington, she learned the delicate art of tea service, the proper angle of a bow, and the precise cadence of the English language. Yet, in the private quarters of her father's modest residence on Victoria Road, she heard the soft murmurs of Punjabi hymns and the distant call to prayer that rose like a low tide over the Thames. The scent of jasmine from a potted plant in a window box mingled with the sharp tang of coal smoke that drifted from the city's factories. These sensory juxtapositions forged in her a keen awareness of two worlds that, for most of her contemporaries, existed in stark opposition. When Sophia turned 16, she was introduced to the burgeoning women's suffrage movement. It was 1893, and the streets of London were alive with banners, the clatter of horse-drawn carriages, and the determined shouts of women demanding the right to vote. Sophia, with her striking features, a high cheekbone, dark, almond-shaped eyes, and hair that fell in a glossy black cascade, joined the Women's Social and Political Union, the militant wing led by Emmeline Pankhurst. She attended meetings in cramped basements where the air was thick with cigar smoke and the metallic tang of determination. In these gatherings, she learned to wield a placard as deftly as a sword, to chant slogans that reverberated through the foggy streets of Westminster. Her activism was not limited to the suffrage cause. Sophia's privileged position allowed her to act as a cultural bridge. She organized tea parties where Indian Maharanis and British aristocrats sat side by side, the clink of porcelain cups punctuating conversations about empire, reform, and identity. She commissioned a series of embroidered shawls that combined the intricate paisley of Punjab with the understated elegance of Victorian lace, each stitch a silent negotiation between heritage and assimilation. The outbreak of World War II in 1939 thrust Europe into a darkness that would test the resolve of every citizen. London, once a city of soot and soot-grey rooftops, became a landscape of blacked-out windows, the distant thrum of anti-aircraft guns, and the acrid smell of burning rubber after nightly raids. Amid the sirens and the shattering of glass, Sophia, then in her early 60s, opened the doors of her Kensington home to refugees fleeing the continent's devastation. It was not a single night, but a series of clandestine evenings that defined her wartime bravery. On the night of 7 October 1940, a family of 3, 2 children and their mother, arrived at her doorstep, their faces smudged with ash, eyes wide with fear. The mother, a French teacher named Marie Dubois, clutched a worn leather satchel containing a single photograph of her husband, a soldier missing in the Battle of France. Sophia welcomed them with a cup of strong tea, the steam rising like a thin veil over the cold stone floor, and a blanket woven from the very shawls she had once designed. Over the next months, she sheltered a total of 20 families, providing not only shelter, but also food, medical supplies, and most importantly, a sense of dignity in a world that had been stripped of it. The British Home Office, wary of any unauthorized housing of foreign nationals, kept a watchful eye on the city's enemy alien registries. Sophia's actions, though risky, were never recorded as treason. Instead, she used her connections, her godmother's former confidante, Lady Lytton, and the network of suffragette allies, to secure permits and ensure that the refugees could remain hidden from the prying eyes of the authorities. In one particularly harrowing episode, a German Luftwaffe bomb struck the neighboring street, sending shards of glass skittering across the courtyard. The refugees huddled beneath a heavy oak table, the smell of dust and cordite filling the air. Sophia, calm as ever, whispered a Punjabi prayer, its low cadence rising above the crackle of the fire that threatened to consume the building. When the fire brigade arrived, they found not a scene of chaos, but a quiet household where teacups were set on saucers, and a young girl, Sophia's niece, read aloud from a battered copy of the Times to the frightened children. These acts of compassion were not isolated gestures. They were part of a lifelong pattern of advocacy. Earlier, in 1911, Sophia had marched alongside Emmeline Pankhurst in a procession that stretched from Hyde Park to the House of Commons. She carried a banner emblazoned with the words, "Votes for women, equal rights for all," the fabric fluttering in the wind like a pennant of defiance. In the same year, she had petitioned the British Parliament to allow Indian soldiers serving in the British Indian Army the same pension rights as their British counterparts, a cause that would not be realized until after her death. The exhibition at Kensington Palace, curated by Dr. Asha Patel of the Royal Historical Society, seeks to encapsulate this extraordinary tapestry of life. Visitors are greeted at the entrance by a life-size bronze statue of Sophia, her posture upright, a veil of silk draped over her shoulders, the faint outline of a suffragette sash visible beneath. The statue's base bears an inscription in both English and Gurmukhi script, a bilingual homage to her dual heritage. Inside, the first gallery is titled "A Princess Between Two Worlds." Here, the walls are lined with portraits, a formal oil painting of the young Sophia in a white christening gown, her hands clasped around the hem of Queen Victoria's mantle, a sepia photograph of her father, Maharaja Duleep Singh, seated in a modest London drawing room, his eyes reflecting both pride and melancholy. The lighting is soft, amber, mimicking the glow of a late afternoon sun that would have filtered through the stained glass windows of the palace's chapel. A glass case displays a set of letters exchanged between Sophia and Queen Victoria. In one, dated 1882, the Queen writes, "Your spirit shines brighter than any jewel, dear Sophia. May you always find the courage to speak your truth." The ink has faded, but the sentiment remains vivid. The second gallery, Suffrage and Silk, immerses visitors in the bustling atmosphere of early 20th century activist meetings. The floor is covered with a replica of a wooden platform, complete with a microphone that crackles as a recorded voice. Sophia's own, taken from a 1913 suffragette rally, declares, "Our fight is not merely for a vote, but for the recognition of our humanity." Surrounding the platform are mannequins dressed in the very shawl Sophia designed, deep indigo fabric interwoven with silver threads, the pattern reminiscent of the Himalayan peaks that once framed her father's kingdom. The scent of sandalwood incense, used in many of the meetings as a calming presence, wafts through the air, evoking the sensory blend that defined her life. The third gallery, War and Refuge, is perhaps the most emotionally resonant. Dimmed lights reveal a reconstructed Kensington townhouse interior, complete with a modest kitchen where a copper pot simmers, releasing a fragrant broth that mingles with the faint smell of soot from a nearby fire. In the corner, a small wooden chest holds personal items donated by the family Sophia sheltered. A French lace handkerchief, a child's wooden toy soldier, a battered diary written in French and English. A projected video loop shows archival footage of London during the Blitz, air raid sirens wailing, blacked-out streets illuminated only by the orange glow of firebars. Over this, a soft voiceover narrates a passage from Sophia's own wartime diary. Each night, as the city shudders under the sky's angry roar, I hear the breath of those I protect. Their hope is a candle I must keep alight. The final gallery, Legacy, invites reflection. A large, floor-to-ceiling window offers a panoramic view of the palace's gardens, where roses bloom in a riot of colors, their perfume mingling with the distant hum of traffic. Here, interactive touchscreens allow visitors to explore a timeline of Sophia's life, from her birth in Calcutta to her death on the 22nd of August, 1948, coincidentally, her 72nd birthday. The timeline highlights key moments: her 1905 marriage to Dr. Charles WWII, a brief union that ended in divorce; her 1910 participation in the women's coronation procession; her 1937 speech at the Indian Independence League; and of course, her wartime humanitarian work. As the exhibition draws to a close, a quiet alcove houses a single, unadorned wooden chair, Sophia's favorite seat for contemplation. A plaque beside it reads, "In the stillness, we hear the echo of her convictions." The ambient sound here is the gentle rustle of leaves outside, the distant toll of St. George's Chapel's bells, and a faint, almost imperceptible melody of a Punjabi folk song, its notes drifting like a memory across time. What does Sophia Duleep Singh teach us more than a century after her birth? She reminds us that identity is not a static label, but a living conversation between past and present, between empire and exile, between privilege and responsibility. Her life demonstrates that bravery does not always roar. Sometimes it is the quiet opening of a door to a frightened family, the patient stitching of a shawl that blends cultures, or the steadfast refusal to let a name be erased from history. In the measured cadence of this narration, we hear the same rhythm that once guided Sophia through palace corridors, suffragette rallies, and war-torn streets. As you step back under the marble steps of Kensington Palace, the echo of your own footsteps merges with hers, a reminder that each of us carries the capacity to bridge worlds, to shelter the vulnerable, and to leave a legacy that, like the polished stone beneath our feet, endures long after we have gone. Closing ambience, the soft chime of the palace's great clock, the distant murmur of visitors discussing the exhibit, and the faint, lingering note of a Punjabi flute. The narrator's voice fades. Narrator, remember Sophia Duleep Singh not merely as a princess or a suffragette, but as a woman who wove together the threads of two continents, who turned her heritage into a banner of compassion, and who, in the darkest hours of war, chose to be a light for others. Her story, now alive within these walls, invites each of us to ask, how will we use the spaces we occupy to shelter, to speak, and to shape the world?